The talisman around his neck glowed faintly, deflecting the tendrils that came too close. Long ago, in the heart of the dense forest of the Ashanti Kingdom, there lived a young hunter named Kofi. He was not the strongest or the wealthiest, but he was known far and wide for his unmatched courage and sharp mind. Kofi loved the forest deeply. He spoke to the trees, befriended the animals, and always treated the land with respect. One day, while hunting deep in the forest, Kofi came across a strange sight. A golden bird, shining like the sun, was caught in a hunter's snare. Its cries filled the air, echoing through the trees. Kofi approached cautiously and freed the bird. As soon as it was free, the bird transformed into a tall, radiant man clothed in golden robes. "I am Yuba, the spider god," said the man. "You have freed me from a wicked spell cast by an envious sorcerer. For your kindness, I will grant you a single favor. Name your wish." Kofi thought deeply. He had no need for riches or power. "I wish to be brave enough to face any danger, no matter how great, and wise enough to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Yuba nodded. "Your heart is pure, young hunter, but your courage and wisdom will be tested soon. Beware the forest of shadows." With that, Yuba vanished into the wind, leaving behind only a faint shimmer in the air. Kofi returned to his village, his mind buzzing with the spider god's warning. A few days later, a royal messenger arrived, his face pale with fear. He announced that the king's only daughter, Princess Abenna, had been abducted by a dark sorcerer who lived deep in the forest of shadows. Many brave warriors had tried to rescue her, but none had returned. The village fell silent, but Kofi stepped forward. "I will go," he said simply. The villagers gasped. "Kofi, the forest of shadows is cursed," an elder warned. "No man who enters ever comes back." "I have no family to mourn me if I fail," Kofi replied. "And if I succeed, I bring hope to the kingdom." Before he left, the village shaman gave Kofi a talisman made of braided vines and beads. "This will protect you from the sorcerer's spells, but only if your heart remains pure," she said. With his bow, quiver, and the talisman, Kofi journeyed into the forest of shadows. The air grew colder as he ventured deeper, and the sunlight disappeared behind the thick canopy. Strange whispers filled the air, and shadows danced on the edges of his vision. After hours of walking, Kofi came to a clearing where a magnificent tree stood. Its trunk was as black as night, and its branches stretched like clawed hands. At its base sat a beautiful young woman, her long hair cascading like a waterfall of silk. She was weeping softly. "Princess Abenna," Kofi called, his voice steady but cautious. The woman looked up, her eyes wide with hope. "Yes, oh please help me. The sorcerer is not far. He has gone to gather herbs for a terrible spell. We must flee before he returns." Kofi approached, but his sharp instincts warned him to be wary. He noticed something strange. While the princess's lips trembled as she wept, her eyes were dry. Kofi hesitated, his hand tightening around the talisman the shaman had given him. He remembered her warning, "Only if your heart remains pure will this protect you." "Why are your eyes dry, princess?" Kofi asked carefully. The woman stiffened, her face momentarily betraying anger before softening into a pleading expression. "The sorcerer has cursed me," she said hurriedly. "My tears have been stolen. Please, we have no time to waste." Kofi took another step closer, his sharp eyes scanning her. That was when he noticed her shadow. It stretched unnaturally long and did not match her form. Instead, it looked like the hunched silhouette of a gnarled creature with claws. "The sorcerer does not frighten me," Kofi said calmly. "But before I take another step, prove to me you are truly Princess Abenna. Tell me something only the princess would know." The woman's eyes flickered with annoyance. "You dare question me? Have you no respect for your future queen?" Her voice grew shrill, and her shadow began to ripple like smoke. Kofi smiled grimly. I respect the princess, but you are not her. The false princess screeched, her beautiful form melting away into a hideous creature with hollow eyes, jagged teeth, and a body made of writhing shadows. You are clever, hunter, the creature hissed, but cleverness will not save you. Before Kofi could react, the shadow creature lunged at him. He rolled to the side, pulling an arrow from his quiver and knocking it in a single fluid motion. The creature moved with inhuman speed, its claws swiping at him, but Kofi stood his ground. As the creature lunged again, he loosed his arrow. The talisman around his neck glowed faintly as the arrow struck through, piercing the creature's heart. It let out a guttural scream, its shadowy form dissolving into a pool of black mist. The air grew still, and Kofi stood, catching his breath. He felt a sudden warmth on his neck and saw the talisman glowing brighter, guiding him deeper into the forest. He followed the light until he reached a massive stone gate carved with intricate symbols. As he approached, the gate began to creak open, revealing a winding staircase that led underground. At the bottom of the staircase was a cavern filled with a soft golden light. There, sitting on a pedestal surrounded by glowing crystals, was the real Princess Abenna. Her beauty was breathtaking, her golden robes shimmering like sunlight on water. Her eyes widened when she saw Kofi. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling with both hope and caution. "I'm Kofi, sent by the kingdom to bring you home," he said, bowing deeply. "But be wary," Abenna said, glancing nervously at the walls of the cavern. "This place is not what it seems. The sorcerer has laid many traps. He will not let me go without a fight." Kofi nodded. "Then we must face him together. I will not leave without you." Princess Abenna smiled faintly, her courage returning. "Very well, but you must hurry, for the sorcerer is always watching, and he is more powerful than you can imagine." Just as she spoke, the cavern began to rumble, and a deep, menacing laugh echoed through the air. Shadows gathered at the edges of the room, forming into the towering figure of the sorcerer, his eyes glowing like embers. "You think you can take her from me, boy?" the sorcerer growled. "You have walked willingly into your doom." Kofi stepped forward, gripping his bow tightly. "I fear no man, not even one who hides in shadows." The sorcerer smirked, raising a hand. The shadows around him surged forward like a tidal wave, and the battle began. Kofi dove to the side as the wave of shadows crashed toward him, the talisman around his neck glowing faintly and deflecting the tendrils that came too close. The sorcerer's laughter echoed through the cavern, filling the air with menace. "Brave words," the sorcerer sneered, his voice like grinding stone, "but your courage will crumble before my power." Kofi knocked an arrow and fired it straight at the sorcerer. The arrow, guided by the talisman's light, flew through, but the shadows surrounding the sorcerer coiled into a dense barrier, shattering the projectile before it could reach him. "You have to do better than that," the sorcerer mocked, extending his hand. From the cavern walls, shadowy creatures began to emerge, their glowing eyes fixed on Kofi and the princess. Kofi's mind raced. The talisman protected him from the shadows, but it was clear that brute force alone wouldn't defeat the sorcerer. He glanced at Princess Abenna, who stood behind him, her eyes flickering with both fear and determination. "Princess," he called out, "what do you know about his power? How does he draw strength?" Abenna hesitated before replying, "The shadows are his essence. They obey him because his heart is bound to them. If we can sever his connection to the shadows, his power will crumble." Kofi's gaze darted around the cavern, searching for anything that could be the key to the sorcerer's weakness. Then he noticed something, a large crystal at the center of the cavern, pulsing with the same malevolent energy as the shadows. "I'll handle the shadows," he said to Abenna. "You must reach that crystal and destroy it." "But I have no weapon," Abenna protested. Kofi reached into his quiver and handed her a dagger made of bone, its blade etched with ancient symbols. "Take this." It's strong enough to shatter stone, but you need to be quick. Abenna nodded, clutching the dagger tightly. With a deep breath, she began to edge toward the crystal. The sorcerer noticed her movement and snarled, "Foolish girl, you think you can defy me?" With a flick of his hand, the shadow creatures surged toward her. Kofi leaped into action, firing arrows with precision, each one striking down a shadowy figure before it could reach the princess. But for every creature he destroyed, two more seemed to rise from the darkness. Realizing he couldn't hold them off forever, Kofi reached into his pouch and pulled out a small vial filled with a shimmering golden liquid, the shaman's final gift. He hurled it onto the ground, and it erupted into a blinding light that sent the shadow creatures reeling. Abenna seized the opportunity and sprinted toward the crystal. The sorcerer roared in fury, his shadowy form expanding and twisting as he tried to block her path. But Kofi, with his talisman glowing brighter than ever, charged directly at the sorcerer, distracting him with a fierce volley of arrows. The sorcerer turned his wrath on Kofi, launching tendrils of shadow that lashed out like whips. Kofi dodged and weaved, his movements swift and precise, but the strain was beginning to show. Finally, Abenna reached the crystal. She raised the dagger high, its blade catching the golden light still lingering in the cavern. "This ends now," she cried, driving the dagger into the heart of the crystal with all her strength. A deafening crack filled the air as the crystal shattered into 1,000 shards. The shadows around the sorcerer faltered, and his form began to collapse, his once mighty presence reduced to a swirling wisp of smoke. But before the sorcerer vanished completely, he let out a chilling laugh. "You think you've won? This is only the beginning." With those final words, the shadows dissipated, leaving the cavern eerily silent. Kofi stumbled, exhausted, as Abenna rushed to his side. "You did it," she said, her voice filled with relief. "We did it," he corrected, managing a weary smile. But his eyes lingered on the shattered crystal, unease gnawing at him. The sorcerer's final words echoed in his mind. Something told him their journey was far from over. As the sorcerer's final words faded, the cavern began to tremble. Kofi and Princess Abenna realized they needed to leave quickly. Supporting each other, they climbed back up the staircase and emerged into the forest, which was now bathed in sunlight. The forest of shadows had transformed. The trees that once loomed ominously now stood tall and vibrant, their leaves shimmering with new life. Birds sang, and the oppressive darkness was replaced with a serene light. When they returned to the kingdom, the villagers and royal court erupted in cheers. The king embraced his daughter with tears of joy and praised Kofi for his bravery and selflessness. "I did not act alone," Kofi said humbly. "It was the princess's courage and determination that saved us all." The king, impressed by Kofi's humility and strength, offered him great treasures. However, Kofi declined. "All I ask is that your kingdom remembers the value of courage, wisdom, and unity," he said. Moved by Kofi's words, the king declared a festival to honor not just the young hunter but also the lessons learned from their ordeal. Kofi and Abenna remained close friends, their bond forged in the trials they faced together. Courage in the face of fear, true bravery is not the absence of fear, but the determination to act despite it. Wisdom triumphs over strength. Problems are best solved with a sharp mind and careful judgment. Teamwork leads to success. Great challenges are overcome when people work together, each contributing their strengths. Humility is a mark of true heroism. Kofi's humility shows that a noble heart values the greater good over personal gain. Thank you so much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe to Niger Trends for more captivating tales and stories. If you enjoyed this story, give it a like and share your thoughts in the comment section below.